If you want to have a lot of worksheets and a half an inch workbook to show that you learned all of these things, you're going to be frustrated because you might not have that.
As you're looking at unit studies, what are the typical ages that are most fitting for a unit study?
The early years are perfect for unit studies because,
Okay.
at now I would say you could do a unit study at all ages. College students could do a unit study. High school students, if you're wanting to have a created transcript that looks like a college prep transcript, it would be a lot of work. If you're supposed to have, what is it, a hundred or 130 or something hours practicing or developing a skill per credit hour, that
Mhm.
would be very, of course, that's different, state by state. I'm just using that example. That would be really hard to pull out of a unit study and have it fit in your transcript. Lots of parents have done it. I was not that parent.
Yeah.
But you're definitely before the transcript years
Uh-huh.
are all great ages to do it. But especially the younger years, they're perfect for it because they're so thirsty for all sorts of exploration.
Mhm.
You aren't as pressured, or you definitely should not be as pressured to get all this stuff done and get all that, do they know all of these things because we're running out of time? And you're really not if they're in second grade. It's
Right.
supposed to be about loving learning, and it's supposed to be about that in high school too. It just looks really different. So the early years are so perfect for it. But I would say until you're writing stuff on a transcript, seventh and eighth grade, they need to be learning some of those things that I would say are a little more formal, or they benefit from that. I wouldn't say need to, because everybody does it differently, but
Sure.
it's so sweet for the early years.
Yeah. Yeah. I just picture, especially if you're doing like a more of a literature based unit study, like 5 in a row, that you would be sitting with your kids on the couch reading to them. I mean, it is my favorite part of our homeschool day. I love sitting with my girls and reading to them. I would do it all day, every day, if that's all I could do. And we do, I would say the majority of our day we spend just reading. But of course we still have to do other things as
Mhm.
well. But I love that because I love the relationship that it builds with my girls. And just that we get to experience something together. There are
Mhm.
so many times where we talk about, whatever, Little House on the Prairie. We'll talk about something that happened through that series and we can all relate to it because we've all read it. And so I love that. So, okay. So it's mostly geared towards or best for the younger years, though it can be used for the later years.
Mhm.
What kinds of kids, what types of kids are unit studies best for?
I would say they're best for all kids,
Okay.
because you can take your unit study and you shape it for that child. And you might have four different learning styles in four different children, and or 10 different learning styles in four different children, and you can shape it for each child. I think it is perfect for children with special needs. You can make all of your activities. Say we're learning about ducks. Well, I'm just going to pick that one. You might paint a duck as the mom is reading a library book about ducks, and then your kiddo who needs to be hands-on and doing something, or the 3-year-old who doesn't like to sit still, but if you give him a paintbrush and some yellow paint, he can start painting something, and that keeps him occupied.
Hmm.
Where your second grader can be drawing with pencil and paper, if that's what maybe they're learning about how to draw with a pencil or charcoal in their art class, and then that's how they might learn or be occupied while mom's reading. Or your auditory kids, of course, you can read tons, and that throws stuff right at your audio kids right away. And then your visual kids, they can be looking at a book, they can be looking at a YouTube video, they can. We used videos really very sparingly,
Okay. Right.
more more so when we had a good library. When we moved to a small town that really didn't have a great library, we did use more YouTube videos, and we didn't enjoy that nearly as much.
Hmm.
But that kiddo was actually one who learned better with all of the stimulation of a video. She wasn't one who did quite as well with the books, but I really was sad. I always prefer books. So when we were learning about, we'll just go back to ducks, we would learn as much as possible from books. So we'll talk more about the different subject and kind of how we would do it, but we did as much as possible from books. And what I really love about unit studies is that they're not expensive. You can pick any topic and
Right.
go to your library or search Encyclopedia Britannica online. You can get a $30 annual subscription, and then you can search, the encyclopedia within a protected area, learn about all sorts of concepts without having to buy anything. If you have a library card, most states, if you have a tiny town, you can go to a larger library. They'll all usually do interlibrary loan.
Right.
So many libraries now let you get a book with Hoopla, or some of
Mhm.
those. So there's so much at our disposal now. There's so much information, but it's a great way if you are needing to limit how much you're spending. That's one of the things that really is great about unit studies that I actually hadn't thought about talking about today, but it really is a great way to do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic because I know so many parents ask that question. I see it all the time of, what are some inexpensive products that I can use for homeschooling? Where do I get free curriculum? And so, yeah, this is a really great way to do this. So, how labor intensive is it for mom? Because I want to talk to the mom who's maybe thinking, like, this sounds amazing. This sounds like it would be a great fit for my family. But how does she move forward in doing this if she's never done a unit study before?
I think some of that is a personality thing. Um, I was very happy to not have a lot to show for our unit study. Some moms really feel like they need to have a lot of proof that they learned
Uh-huh.
something, and it's going to be more labor intensive for that mom.
Okay.
What I would say to that mom is to try and relieve yourself of that pressure, because the proof can be your experiences.
Hmm.
Take a picture of reading, take a picture of feeding the ducks at the duck pond. That can be your proof of learning. If you want to have a lot of worksheets and a half an inch workbook to show that you learned all of these things, you're going to be frustrated because you might not have that. Now, that said, also, some of the moms who want to have a lot of that proof will go on Pinterest, and they'll find 14 activities on bears and hibernating. And then they will think they're supposed to do 14 activities on hibernating to show that they did enough. That mom will also feel pressure to make sure she's doing enough. So it doesn't have to be difficult. If you if what I would encourage in any mom who's starting homeschooling is to say, you have your this child has their whole lives ahead of them to learn what they need to learn. God didn't create the scope and sequence or our state standards.
Yeah.
God didn't write about any of those things in the Bible.
Right.
So we need to free ourselves from those things. We, as the homeschooling parent, get to decide, what is our child going to learn. Now, they obviously, every state is different. Some states, we happen to live in one that we are truly free to do whatever we want to in homeschooling. Not all are like that.
Right.
But so I would just want to encourage the mom. You want to love learning with your kid, especially in those younger years. And one thing that I think is important to say to that mom who may have grandma who is questioning, what year did World War II happen, or who was the 14th president? Well, first of all, I want to say back to that grandma, you tell me who's the 14th president, and you
Right.
tell me 17 and 21 and 27. Do you know them all? Probably not. So, first of all, I would say relieve yourself of that pressure. The Lord has given you the opportunity and the challenge to homeschool. So,
Hmm.
you get to decide what your child is going to learn. And then I would say, whatever in relieving yourself of that pressure, all students, all adults, we all have gaps.
Yeah.
None of us know everything. And students who move all over the country, they definitely have gaps, because I mean, I hit mythology so many times, but I managed to get all the way through my public school years without, I never learned about the Vietnam War,
Hmm.
but I learned mythology constantly. I thought, "Oh, again?" Because it just happened to be those years and all those different, my dad was in the military, so we had lots of different school systems, but we all have gaps. Some people, we might even have all of this information, every single scope and sequence and state standard. We might all be presented with all that information, but we're not gonna remember it all, because we
Right.
remember what is of interest to us
Right.
or what a teacher chose to present in an interesting manner. So, it is okay if your kid doesn't remember everything that your neighbor remembers, or that the fourth grader across the street at a private school remembers. So I would say, go into it knowing that they are learning. It's not a matter of checking things off a list. It's
Mhm.
about learning, love exploring. So, all of that said, how labor intensive is it? It's as labor intensive as you choose to make it.
Good.
The way I did it is on a Sunday afternoon, I would pick the next 3 or 4 weeks, and remember I did have a good library system, but even when I didn't actually make it any harder on myself. Um, Also, I'm a public school teacher. I have a K-12 teaching degree in special ed, and I didn't have any trouble relieving myself of the pressure,
Yeah, good.
for performance. Um, so what I would do is I would write down my list of things that we wanted to learn. I would go to the library or to YouTube and I would find the things that covered the topics that we wanted. And then I would write them down or just put check marks, on my list. This is what I wanted to learn. And then on Monday, I would sit there and go, okay, I only have an hour today because we have to go to a doctor's appointment. So we're going to do those things that are a little bit quicker.
Mhm.
Tuesday, we're home all day long. Dad works late. Okay, we're going to do the messy stuff today and we're going to do art and painting and build some island with Play Doh or whatever. Wednesday, we've got co op at 11 o'clock. We have an hour and a half this morning. We're going to do some of those shorter things. That's how I did it. It was
Mhm.
open and go. So, like I said, it can be as labor intensive as you want it to be or as you choose not to make it. And all of that is going to be based on the pressure or feeling to put on yourself, um, typically to have proof of
Right.
what we're learning. So, I would encourage every mom to let it go.